Right, I've been dreading this one. This is my reaction to my Premier League 22-23 season table prediction. So another Premier League season has come to an end, and despite it looking like we were going to be served up something different to the usual, ultimately Arsenal bottled it and Manchester City did what they always do, finished strong and ran out winners of this Premier League season. Now, before a ball was even kicked, I, like a lot of others, predicted this season's entire Premier League table, and you know what? I didn't do very fucking well. Anyway, let's get into the video. Let's have a look at my shocking Premier League predictions. In 20th place, rock bottom of the league, I had Bournemouth. Yep, so not off to a very good start. I had Bournemouth finishing rock bottom. They actually finished 15th. But to be honest, yeah, everyone thought Bournemouth were going to go down. And if it weren't for Gary O'Neill coming in and working miracles at Bournemouth, they probably would have gone down. So I don't think it was too bad a prediction. But yeah, the Cherries ended up finishing the season pretty comfortable in the end, really. In 19th place, I had Southampton. Okay, so that's more like it. They actually finished 20th, but I'm taking this one. Despite them making 15 signings, I had seen some serious red flags from Southampton in the 21-22 season, and despite a 10-year stay in the Premiership, something told me that the Saints were going down. So, yeah, a rare win for me on this one, and probably the last. In 18th spot, I had Leeds United. Fuck me. 2 out of 3 in a season where not one promoted team got relegated. That's pretty impressive, isn't it? Yeah, they didn't stick with him, but I just knew that Jesse Marsch and Leeds weren't a fit. Listen, American football has come and continues to come a long, long way since I was a kid, but I just didn't think in an American manager and Jesse Marsch, he was going to be what Leeds needed to battle a relegation-threatened season that I could see before a ball was even kicked. And although he wasn't there in the end, he definitely played a part in Leeds' relegation. I actually think if Sam Allardyce had been given a bit more time in the job, then maybe he could have saved them. But yeah, Leeds were a shambles this season. In 17th place, I had Fulham. Yep, another win. I said Fulham would stay up, and they did. Next, let's be honest, I was well off on this one. I didn't think an old fan favourite of my club, Chelsea, William, would be able to perform to the standard he did this season. I didn't think that Mitrovic could consistently score goals in the Premier League, and he did. And you know what? I definitely underrated Marco Silva as a manager. I didn't think he was a manager that could really have Fulham battling for sort of mid-table to Europa League places, and he did. So, hats off to Fulham. You absolutely smashed it this season. In 16th place, I had Everton. Yeah, I had Everton beating a drop by 2 spaces. They actually only beat it by 1 after finishing 17th and avoiding relegation on the final day. Another ropey season for Everton, to be honest. But you know what? I think there is cause for optimism, because I think that if the owners can back Sean Dyche and reinvest a little bit in him over the summer, I actually think Everton will have a way more comfortable season next year. In 15th place, I had Brentford. It's a bad one, isn't it? They finished 9th. Right, let me explain. There was 2 things that had me underestimating just how good Brentford actually are. The first thing was Ivan Toney. Toney had a really decent first season of Premier League football, bagging 12 goals, albeit half of those were penalties. But it's hard to cast my mind back, but surely I couldn't imagine that he was going to finish 3rd top goal scorer in the league, banging in 20 goals and actually only 1 more penalty scored than the season before. And the other reason I believe I was quite far off on this one was Christian Eriksen. I cannot tell you how much I did and still do rate Christian Eriksen, and after he left, I just thought Brentford were really going to struggle. And unlike some pundits I have seen, I never thought that they were going down, but I didn't think they'd push on and finish 4 places higher. So well done to Thomas Frank, well done to Brentford. In 14th, I had Nottingham Forest. Actually, finish-wise, this one isn't too bad. They ended up finishing 16th. I thought that they would struggle bedding in all them players, but not so much that it would end in them getting relegated. Where I was well off on this was out of the 3 promoted clubs, Fulham, Forest and Bournemouth, I had Forest doing the best out of all of them. So, yeah, I was wrong on that. In 13th, I had Crystal Palace. Yeah, not too far off on this one either. They actually finished 11th. I definitely didn't see them ending the season with Roy Hodgson back in charge, but yeah, interesting. I'll be interested to see what Palace do next season. In 12th spot, I had Brighton and Hove Albion. Yeah, this is another loss I'm going to have to take, I think. I thought Brighton would drop off slightly from what we had seen the season before. Obviously, they had already lost Ben White. They went on to lose Yves Bissouma to Tottenham and Cucurella to Chelsea, who at the time were both highly thought of players. If I'm honest, I clearly hadn't noticed what a well-run club Brighton were. I was putting so much of their success down to Graham Potter. He leaves, De Zerbi comes in, and they carry on smashing it, end up finishing 3 places higher, qualifying for Europe, and yeah, this has got to be one of my shitter predictions. In 11th spot, I had Wolverhampton Wanderers. Yeah, I had them 11th. They ended up finishing 13th. And despite the fact that they changed manager and signed a free agent in Diego Costa, nothing really surprised me about Wolves' season this year. It pretty much went how I thought it was going to go. Interesting to see what they do next season. Something tells me that Wolves could be dark horses to go down next year. In 10th, I had Aston Villa. Yeah, Stevie G's Aston Villa that is no longer Stevie G's Aston Villa. Gerrard slipped away, Emery slipped in, and you know what? He's turned them into a seriously dangerous team for next season, in my opinion. I predicted that Villa would get a top 10 finish, which they did, but I didn't see them making a late push for European football. And after finishing 7th and qualifying for the Europa Conference League, you can see how buzzing all their fan base was. So yeah, really good season for Villa. In 9th spot, I had Leicester City. Oh, this is a bad one, isn't it? But can I ask you a lot of question and be honest with me, yeah? No one saw Leicester going down this year. They had a manager in Brendan Rodgers that at one point was sort of considered one of the best of the rest, so to speak, in managerial terms. They had a stat squad that included the likes of Wesley Fofana, Harvey Barnes, Tielemans, Jamie Vardy, Iheanacho, James Maddison. Oh, it's mad to think Leicester are gone, man. I did think they would drop off a little bit from seasons gone by, but I still thought that squad had enough to get a top 10 finish in the Premier League, and ultimately, they didn't. I've seen some surprise relegations in my time, whether it be the West Ham team that went down on 42 points back in the day, the 2002-2003 Leeds side that went down after playing a Champions League semi-final not long before, or even the 08-09 Newcastle team that went down. But this one takes the biscuit, mate. How have Leicester City dropped out of the Premier League? Madness. I'm still lost for words on this one. In 8th spot, I had Newcastle United, who ended up finishing 4th and qualifying for Champions League football. Now, Newcastle were one of the best teams in the second half of the 21-22 season under Eddie Howe, and I actually thought that they would push on, and I thought that taking them from 11th place in the table to 8th place in the table would be fair enough, and I'm pretty sure that Geordie fans would have agreed with me at the time. What I didn't think they would do was become the best defence in the Premier League, secure Champions League football for the first time in God knows how long, get to a cup final, and show Man City exactly how you do it when your club has a big money takeover. No fucking about. Excuse me, Chelsea, out the way, Tottenham, piss off Liverpool, the Geordies are coming through. Newcastle fans, you had to suffer a lot this past decade or two, so here's to the good times that are clearly to come ahead. In 7th place, I had West Ham United. Yeah, in the league, West Ham have massively underachieved this season, you know. No noticeable departures when it comes to transfers, riding the wave off their best season in years, with the additions of Skamaka and Paqueta, Maxwell Cornet, I just thought West Ham would have a really good season again. However, there is an asterisk by this one. If this goes out after the Europa Conference League final, which it almost certainly will, West Ham may well have won that competition. And if they have won that competition, then all of what I've just said is irrelevant because you have won a European trophy. I think they will win it. And do you know what? Even if they don't, could be worse, couldn't it? You could be Leicester. In 6th place, I don't want to say it, I had Arsenal. Right, do you know what? I know a lot of Arsenal fans, and most of them, to be honest, didn't think they were getting a top 4 finish. They bottled it at the death last season, and yes, they made some good additions over the summer, but I just didn't think Arteta had the chops for it. Oh, I even said to a mate of mine, it wouldn't surprise me if he got the sack halfway through the season. I was so wrong on this one. And listen, everyone has had a lot to say about Arsenal bottling the league title, and to go on record, they did bottle the league. But everything changes halfway through a season. And in hindsight, when you look back at the start of the season, if you had have offered Arsenal a second place finish, Champions League football in the season to come, they would have bit your hand off. So, regardless of how it ended, you can't say that this season has been anything but a success for Arsenal. In 5th place, I had Manchester United. I mean, this wasn't the worst shout, was it? It wasn't that good a shout either, I suppose. I thought that Man United would have a better season than last. I thought that Ten Hag would bring a lot to the squad and bring some young players through. And I thought there'd be a lot more optimism going into next season after this campaign. But I definitely didn't see this season going as well for Man United as it did. There was even one point when they were looked at like dark horses or outsiders for the title race. That didn't last long either. But to be fair, listen, this is a good season for Man United. Right, these predictions are about to get fucking bad. In 4th spot, I had Spurs. Oh, I had them making Champions League. They didn't even make European football. They didn't make Conference League. Looking back on it now, why did I ever think a relationship between Daniel Levy and Antonio Conte was ever going to work? The narrative going into the season was that Spurs had won the transfer market. They spent well and they spent early. And I just thought with a managerial know-how of former Premier League winner Antonio Conte, Harry Kane having better service from what was seen as really good signings at the time. And obviously they turned up late in the day last season under Conte and secured that 4th spot. I thought they'd be good enough to get it done again. They didn't, and I've got to be honest, things ain't looking great for Spurs going forward. In 3rd spot, I had Chelsea. This season has been absolute torture. We finished 12th in the league. Yeah, do you know what? Life's too short. I'm not reliving it. Next, in second place, I had Manchester City. What a fucking idiot. What sort of freak backs against Man City winning the league? We are officially a Farmers League. City have won 5 out of 6. By this time next year, it'll probably be 6 out of 7. And I'm really fucking bored of it. Wake me up when Pep leaves. Not interested. So that being said, in first place, I had Liverpool running out as Premier League champions for this season. Right, hear me out. In my lifetime, we've seen some notable managerial rivalries in the Premier League, whether it be Wenger against Fergie, Wenger against Jose, Jose against Fergie, and we haven't really had one over a sustained period of time since then until Klopp against Pep. And going into this season, it was 4-1 in favour of Pep. But despite the lack of reinforcement in that Liverpool midfield over the summer, despite the fact that, you know, there's going to be potential burnout from pushing City so hard the season before and ultimately finishing with, 92 points and ending up not winning the league, and the mental and physical fatigue that can have on players, I just thought that Klopp was going to make it 4-2 here. I thought that this rivalry was too good and too competitive to end up being one-sided. But I was very, very wrong. For most of the season, Liverpool underwhelmed. Pep ended up doing what Pep always ends up doing, and actually the manager that I had discredited in Mikel Arteta ended up being the manager that ran Pep the closest in the league this year, while Klopp was overseeing a side that spent most of the season in mid-table and ended up finishing 5th. So yeah, very wrong on this one. Anyway, there's my reaction to my shit Premier League predictions. I scored 0 out of 20 right, and that means that there is room for optimism, because next season when I do the exact same thing again, at worst I can only score the same. Anyway, if you like the video, do me a favour, click subscribe, hit the bell, all of that stuff. I'll see you in the next one.